Most men today have no idea just how truly powerful they are. We've been conditioned to fear our own desires, to waste our creative energy, and to see sex as either a guilty pleasure or some kind of performance. We live in an age of endless digital stimulation, free porn at our fingertips, and increasingly blurry lines between man and machine. And at the same time, so many of us are deeply frustrated because we feel this primal urge and drive within us, but we've never been taught how to harness it or how to direct it skillfully. Most of us carry immense amounts of shame and repression around sex. We struggle with porn addiction. We suffer from erectile dysfunction, or we ejaculate too quickly. And of course, our relationships suffer because we are silently suffering. So in this episode, I'm going to be sharing an empowering path for you to start navigating your way through all of this. One that will help you to actually take back control and to heal the deep wounds that exist inside of you and to step into your full power as a man. If you're new here, welcome to Awakened Evolution. My name is Jasper Brown, and I've been walking the path of semen retention and sexual mastery and conscious relationships for the last decade. And in that time, I've had the honor of coaching hundreds of men around these issues. So I'm going to bring the wealth of experience that I have in this field into this discussion. And I want to start this by really understanding the crisis of sexual disconnection that we're in at the moment, because we are living in the most sexually disconnected era of human history. 91% of men watch porn every single month. 1 in 4 men under 40 struggle to get it up. Testosterone is down 25% since the 1980s, contributing to low libido, widespread depression, and a lack of virility and vitality. 70% of divorces are initiated by women in the West, and the most cited reason for that is emotional disconnection and a lack of intimacy. 1 in 3 men under 30 report not having had sex in the past year, which is the highest rate of sexual inactivity in modern history. 63% of men report feeling disconnected or unfulfilled in their sex lives, even when they have a regular partner. So why is men's relationship to sex so limited, disturbed, and dysfunctional? To understand that, I think we need to look at the cultural conditioning that we as men receive growing up and emerging from adolescence into boyhood, into manhood. Most of us start accessing porn between the ages of 11 and 13, which sets us up from the beginning with an unrealistic and artificial sexual education. And on top of that, if you're anything like me, you didn't get much of a sexual education. What we get taught in school is abysmal and doesn't prepare us for what we actually face when we start having intimate experiences or relationships. We're also bombarded with this constant stimulation from devices. Our attention spans are increasingly fragmented. There's an epidemic of attention deficit disorder in our society and a distinct lack of nervous system regulation training. Most of us are sort of taught to chase sex as a form of validation, social status, this kind of culture of conquest, which doesn't really help us understand how to create real intimacy. We're exposed to a culture that is addicted to dopamine, chronically depleted, jumping from one device to the next, bombarded by hundreds of adverts every single day. We're split, we're fragmented, and we're disembodied. Most of us live up here stuck in our heads because we've been conditioned to not develop emotional intelligence, that's a feminine thing, that it makes emotions make you weak. And yet we are driven by our emotions, whether we admit that or not. And so as men, a lot of us learned that we would survive by bottling things up, by suppressing ourselves and putting on a stoic mask, pretending we're fine, even when we're not. And deep down, many of us are traumatized. Many of us are struggling to make sense of all of the difficult shit that life throws at us. The rejection from the feminine, failed relationships, fragmented or dysfunctional family systems, depression, anxiety, and just the constant drain of trying to figure out how to survive. 1 in 4 men, 25%, experienced some form of sexual violence in their lifetime, but only less than 25% of male survivors ever disclose their abuse to anyone. On average, men wait 20 or more years before disclosing their experience of sexual trauma to anyone. And in that time, obviously, they suffer in silence. 80% of men report long-term sexual dysfunctions in their life. Erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or disconnection during sex. 68% of men experience chronic guilt and shame around their arousal and around pleasure. And for me, these stats are staggering. This is wild. We are living through an epidemic of sexual dysfunction in our society. And what the fuck? What is going on? And second, if you are listening to this and you're in that category, chances are that you are in one of those categories that I listed, you're not alone. You are certainly not alone. In fact, the majority of other men on this planet are dealing with similar issues to you. So I hope you feel a little bit validated by that. In order to understand what is going on here, I think we need to bring a developmental lens. If you've been listening to my channel for a while, I work a lot with developmental psychology, bringing lenses like spiral dynamics and Ken Wilber's integral theory. These kind of maps of meaning making and understanding the way that culture and humanity and the psyche evolves throughout time. And so spiral dynamics brings us a number of different stages, 8 stages of human development, each color-coded and each emergent from certain stages of history. And when we look at our sexual conditioning, we can see that a lot of the dysfunction, a lot of the repression that we experience around sex has come as a result of religious upbringing, religious values, which is known as stage blue, which is the 4th stage of development, which really emerged from the times in history when religion was front and center as a part of the marriage between church and state. And we've seen that as a result of that, there's been a desire to control people's sexuality as one of the mechanisms for controlling and directing people's energy and influencing the masses, we can say. If you control someone's sex, you've got them by the balls, literally. And that was necessary. I'm not here to demonize that. That was a necessary part of human development where we needed that kind of hierarchy. We needed order. We needed rules and tradition and certain conservative principles that helped us to find meaning and direction with life. And at the same time, I believe at the moment, we're also experiencing some of the negative consequences that arose from stage blue, a certain repressive relationship to sex, where it was very controlled. And we've seen how that plays out in the Christian church, for example. A lot of priests having repressed their sexual energy find leaky or unconscious or unhealthy ways that gets expressed. That's why the church has been mired in so many scandals. It's the epitome as a kind of representation of what happens when you repress sexuality. It finds its way out in other ways. The next stage above stage blue is what is called stage orange, stage 5, which is the scientific, materialistic, rational stage of development. It's very consumeristic and profit driven. We could say capitalism or late stage capitalism. The kind of time period that we're in at the moment is really emergent from stage orange. We're in, as a center of gravity, humanity is still stage blue, stage orange. There's billions of people are still adhering to mainstream religious doctrine throughout the world, and billions of people are existing in Western democracies, which are very stage orange. The whole world is stage orange and blue, predominantly. As a center of gravity, we actually have a distribution across many different stages, or all the stages in some way, shape, or form. But as a center of gravity, that's what humanity really values. And we can see, as a result of this capitalistic approach towards society, where everyone is pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, where it's very focused on the success of the individual, the market drives the economy, and there's a certain drive and value of profit. That's why we have the most successful people are the ones with the most money. And so sex and the way that we relate to sex within stage orange has resulted in the emergence or the confluence of pornography emerging as a result of the technological innovations of the internet. And sex has become something that was highly productized. It was converted into a product that can be used for profit. And that's one of the virtues of capitalism. It will find ways to meet the needs of the market. And if there's profit to be had, there will be profit generated. And so we've seen an explosion of sexual products on the internet. Porn is, I forget the stats, but porn is like half the internet is porn, which speaks to the tremendous need, the tremendous need that exists, that's getting met. And on some level that is necessary, like obviously there's a need there and it's getting met one way or another. And at the same time, it also brings with it a lot of negative consequences, just like stage blue was necessary with religion, and it also came with pros and cons. Stage orange also comes with pros and cons. We have an explosion of content on the internet. We have sexual needs getting met in a very instantaneous way. And that is also important because it's driving the conversation. It's taking sex out of the shadow in some sense and putting it into the light. It's on the table in front of us. It's something that we then have to confront. And we have to learn how to deal with. We have to figure out, it's become much more a part of the conversation. It's no longer something just hiding in the shadows. It's on your screen. It's in front of your face. And culturally, that brings up a lot of issues. Culturally, it's, part of that is the result of the statistics that I'm talking about here. And there's major issues there that we need to confront and figure out. And part of the way that we are starting to confront that is what comes with stage green. Stage green is stage 6, which is we can think of as pluralistic, as postmodern. Stage green values are the emergence of the Greens movement, where we start to care about the environment, start to care about other species, start to care about the planet. It's the emergence of feminism and human rights and racial equality, the whole trans, gender equality kind of movements, LGBTQ, all of this. This is stage green. And stage green brings with it healing modalities. It's an opening of the heart. It's a meeting, and an attempt to bring empathy and compassion and understanding, and to reduce the hierarchies and the inequalities of the world. And so that's bringing an attempt to heal a lot of this stuff. It tempers and it adds on top of the kind of like moral rigidity of stage blue and the capitalistic, consumeristic attitudes and values of stage orange. And it starts to reduce, to temper some of that, like saying, hey, it's not enough just to be really rigid and hierarchical. It's not enough to just have endless profit. We also need to, there's other things that are important: balance, harmony, integration, healing. This stuff matters. There are profound inequalities in the world, and that's creating a lot of suffering. Let's do something about that. That's what stage green wants to do. And there's also problems with stage green. As we've seen, the woke movement can go too far. Stage green can try to push things too far too quickly. Like, let's deconstruct all genders, for example. While that is, of course, something that we can do, and yes, indeed, gender is a social construct, it's a very useful, very well-established construct that a lot of people rely on for their sense of self and their identity. So we can deconstruct it, and over time we should deconstruct it. But we also need to be responsible and mature about the way that we go and deconstruct it. Because sex is a part of our identity. It's a profound and evolutionary and biological function that exists inside of us. That's not something casual that we just deconstruct. I mean, we can, but people are going to react against that. People are going to have visceral defensive reactions against that because it's very threatening to our identity. If you start casually deconstructing what it means to be a man or a woman and start switching up the bathrooms, that's going to be threatening for people. And so we are in the midst of a time of intense cultural confusion around gender, identity, sex, and how we make meaning of all of that. It's a weird time, isn't it? And so beyond stage green, we have stage yellow and stage turquoise. That's known as tier 2, where we start to bring an integrative systemic lens, where we start to see all of these lower stages. We start to see the state, the spiral of human development. And we start to look at that as a lens of systems. We have inputs, we have outputs, we have results. The system is creating certain outputs or certain consequences, and they're very complex systems. And when we start to bring a systemic lens, we start to understand how everything fits together, just as I'm explaining this to you. The different stages of development help us to understand the confluence of different forces and different value systems within the way that we create meaning around sex and identity and relationships. So instead of just being a war, a gender war or a value war between different people, we can actually see that this is different systems or different times of functions of human evolution at war with each other over different values and the way to do things. Powerful, really, really powerful to look at it through this lens. And in stage turquoise, this is what we would call the spiritual or the unitive stage of development, where we start to value integration and cohesion, where everything starts to merge, boundaries start to dissolve, we start to feel connected to everything, we start to feel a sense of oneness, consciousness, and love. This is where we really start to see sex as sacred, something deeply sacred. And I'll be sharing more about how we can actually start doing that a little bit later in this episode. And how we can get to these higher stages. I mean, just by listening to this and understanding this and doing some of the practices that I'll be talking about shortly, you are going to start moving in that direction. So I want to talk now about the nature of sexual energy as it exists inside of us, because I think this is really important. Contemplate. What is sex? What is that as a function? Why does it exist? For me, when I think about this question, I think about sexual energy as life. I mean, there isn't life without sex. Sex is an intricate part of the evolutionary function of life to be able to reproduce and copy itself and to move through iterations and evolve. Without sex, there is no life. So sex, or the act of reproduction, is actually like a built-in function of the system. It's integral. And life is constantly fucking itself. That's what drives evolution. That life is this, I mean, what is life? It's weird, isn't it? Where did it come from? How does it exist? Why is it here? How did it start? And look at it. It's like this virus that has spread throughout the entire world and bred itself into millions of different forms. The intelligence of it and the mystery of it is staggering. And within that, I think it's also important to acknowledge that it's one of the most natural things that life does. It is what life does. And yet we treat it as this weird, taboo, confusing topic with all kinds of repressions and shame and traumas, and it's complicated, right? And at the big picture level, it's also this creative impulse. It's the function that births consciousness. You wouldn't be listening to this, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be able to perceive my voice and listen or watch me talking if it wasn't for this pulse of life that emerges as a result of this sexual function somehow. And so this is what all of the ancient traditions, the spiritual traditions, the yogis, the tantrics, the monks, they recognized this. That when you can relate to the essence or the sexual essence that exists inside of you, that it's not dirty, it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's not disgusting, it's sacred. And it only becomes dirty or dangerous or, unconscious when we don't know how to relate to it in a healthy way, or how to direct it and choose where we want to put it. And so it is with this in mind that I want to introduce the path that I have discovered for myself. Like many young men, I emerged from my teenage years and my early 20s, scratching my head, really confused. I'd been at the mercy of my lack of sexual education, replaced by an education that I received from pornography, mixed with a lot of dysfunctional experiences, rejection from women, embarrassing, shameful performances with sex, sexual trauma, a lot of confusion, a lot of repression, scratching my head, knowing, somehow deeply sensing that there was more to this and that this was a deep need that existed inside of me, like it was a longing. I want to have sex. I want to experience. I know there's more to it. I can feel that there's something profound in this part of myself, and it's driving so much of my behavior, chasing sexual experiences, chasing women, wanting relationships, failing in relationships, and sex is somehow at the heart of it all. It's like this primary pulse that exists inside of me. And that's what led me to India. That's what led me to studying sacred sexuality and practicing tantra. And when I started that path, I found a new way of relating to sex that wasn't within the culture that I grew up in here in Australia. It was something that treated sex as something sacred, as something beautiful, as something divine, something to integrate, something to master within myself, and giving me spiritual practices. And I started to build a discipline around cultivating my sexual energy. I started to practice semen retention, and I've been practicing that for the last 10 years. And really, that is just the intention to withhold from ejaculation. It's developing a more conscious relationship with your sexuality and being intentional. Some traditions take that as celibacy and repression, as I've talked about in Stage Blue Religion. I don't particularly find that to be a useful approach. I think that's not the healthiest way to do it, although you can experiment with that, and there are, find out for yourself. As always, test. But for me, the more that I've practiced it has turned into, and it has become, a way of cultivating and containing my energy. And as you refrain from ejaculation, a lot of things happen. First of all, we're breaking a pattern, because for most of our life and most of society teaches us to discharge our energy, to ejaculate frequently. That's certainly the temptation that comes with watching pornography. And that's where we get a lot of our education. It's all about the finish, So semen retention is a very simple way to restructure the way that we relate to sex and intimacy. It's an act of retaining and cultivating and consciously choosing and being intentional about what we're doing with this primary source of energy that exists inside of us. That energy can create new life. The orgasm is a profoundly blissful, ecstatic experience. And so there's something in that, right? There's something powerful in that. Life has put a highlight, underneath that. It's important. And so what happens when we start to contain that energy? It builds. It builds inside of us. And as a result of that pressure increasing, our consciousness also expands. We become aware of new sensations, new energetic movements within us, new subtle sensations, different forms of pleasure. We can even unlock orgasms without ejaculation, which is epic and very, very ecstatic. I'll talk more about that as we go as well. And at the same time, if we approach semen retention in a very rigid, very strict, very performative kind of way, like a kind of biohacking kind of way, or nofap kind of way, it can also lead to a lot of frustration. Without direction, without the capacity to ground and integrate that energy, we can end up becoming very frustrated. And that energy can then leak out in other ways which are not so healthy. It might amplify our aggression. It might push anger out of the system. It might create resentment. It might reveal certain shadows that exist inside of us. Or we just might find it really difficult to practice this. Which is why we need to combine semen retention with nervous system mastery. to essentially expand our capacity to hold energetic charge within the system of our body. And for me, this act or this practice of retention is a very masculine practice. It's the intention to contain, to create frame and structure around energy. So for me, this is it's almost like a boundary function. It's a capacity for containment, to create a boundary. And a boundary protects us. A boundary defines what we let in and what we let out of our system energetically. And if we think about you as a system, you're like you're a character that's walking around in this bubble of life. And we have inputs and outputs. We have input of food, energy, sunlight, sound, nutrients, water, emotions, relationships. All of this is coming into us. And also we have outputs. We have, biological processes that eliminate waste. We have ejaculation. We have our words, our emotions that we push out there into the world. And so it's powerful to become aware of what we put in and what we let out of our bodies. This is part of developing ourselves to be a fully individuated self. And this is why I push this idea so much of integration. We want to become aware of all of the different aspects of us to master ourselves. And so this act of cultivating and refraining from ejaculation, it also trains us to contain not just that energy, but also our emotions, our communication, what happens in relationships, the truth that exists inside of us, our thoughts, our beliefs, our ideas, our feelings, our impulses, our urges. And I think it adds weight to this idea that how we do one thing is often how we do everything or many things. And so by retraining one of these biological functions, we can become very intentional. We can stop being so wasteful. We can become much more conscious of our impulsive needs and our desires and how we conduct ourselves in the world, how we show up in relationships, for example. And I think this is something that calls to a lot of men. We sense deep down that this is, our sex is a tremendous energy. It's one of our primary urges, this desire that leads us through life and directs us in so many different ways. That's why women say we're controlled not by our brains, but by our, by our cock, led around by our cocks. So in order to do this well and to do this properly, we need to become aware of our nervous system. We need to become aware of that energy existing inside of us and how we can start to direct it. So first, let's understand that ejaculation is this biological process which is governed by the nervous system, as well as the hormonal systems of our body. We have a need for pleasure, we have a need for connection, we have a need for intimacy, and these are felt by us as a certain urge. We feel motivated in a certain direction, so we seek an outlet for it. We seek that need to get met. We can do that through porn, we can meet that need digitally, we can meet it through self-pleasure, masturbation. We can meet that need through sex with a partner. We can meet that need by forming relationships. And when we meet that need, generally there's some form of stimulation that, tickles the nerves, and that pleasure results from that. It feels good, and that starts to build up a charge in our nervous system. It starts to build a sympathetic charge. And when that charge overrides your nervous system's capacity to hold the charge, the energy outstrips the container, so to speak, we ejaculate. And that creates a discharge of that energy. You know, after you ejaculate, you feel, relaxed. The nervous system down regulates. You feel sleepy. You feel, it feels good. It feels pleasurable. There's a load that gets taken off, literally. And this is also why so many men struggle with semen retention or fail at semen retention, because we haven't been taught how to down-regulate our nervous system. So instead, we build up, release, and that ejaculation is like the release valve to reduce the pressure inside the system. And so many of us have relied or become addicted to using ejaculation as a release valve, as a way to down-regulate our nervous system, to deal with all of the stress, all of the anxiety, all of the shame, all of the stuff that we don't want to feel. It's easier to just release that energy, down-regulate the nervous system, and forget all of our problems. And, that happens because we haven't been taught how to get out of the head and into the body. We haven't been taught embodiment. We haven't been conditioned to develop more somatic intelligence. We lack the discipline of being able to feel things and choose how we want to respond. Instead, most of us are driven by our impulses and our moods and our desires in a very animalistic, instinctual way. Most people on the planet behave in very unconscious, very animalistic ways. We're just survival monkeys, just getting our needs met. Eating, fucking, sleeping. And that's fine unless you want to aim for something higher. If you want to aim to transcend survival, we need to master survival. And we need to, in my view, develop a frame, a scaffolding of values and principles and skills that allow us to aim for more. We need to have a certain structure around this part of ourselves that helps us to remain in integrity and in alignment and actually aspire to something greater. And for me, this is crucial for semen retention because there are many forces in the world that want to suck your energy. The whole pornographic industry thrives and survives off sucking your energy, your life force, your money, your attention. They've monetized your attention. There's entire industries that benefit, all of these online industries, all of the social media companies, all of the, the product marketing agencies and all of the corporations and stuff benefit off you and your energy, your money, your attention. All of this is, there's billion-dollar companies that have invested in siphoning and extracting as much value from you as possible. And so it's important to understand that. It's important to see that. And this is really why I say that it's important to have a frame and structure and to understand why we're doing this, because we want to take back control. And in that process of reclaiming our power and healing ourselves and integrating this part of us, this powerful evolutionary pulse of life that emerges through us, that's going to be tested. We're constantly being tested. We're going to be tested by women. We're going to be tested by porn. We're going to be tested by, devices. We're going to be tested by just life, emotional overwhelm, the stress of survival, anxiety, our trauma, our shame. All of this stuff is going to be pressure on the system, tempting you to take the easy road. And so we need solid frame if we're going to resist these temptations that arise and if we want to reach for something higher. And so let's make it practical. So sexual energy rises through your body, through the energetic channels inside of you. When we start to retain, obviously there's going to be more energy in the system. We're going to build up charge like a magnet that's accumulating charge. And it's also going to come up against blockages in the system. You've got your trauma, you've got your shame, you've got areas where the energy stagnates, or you just simply haven't unlocked certain parts of you yet. And that might lead you to feeling physical discomfort. You might get blue balls. And so the goal of what is known as sexual energy transmutation is to move energy up. It's to transmute that energy from being very stuck, very stagnant, very primal, very low, very instinctual, very lusty at the base. That energy is going to be, we want to move it up towards the heart, where we connect it with the energy of love, with empathy, with compassion, and to make this very important connection. So we're not just animalistic, led by a cock. We're actually, that lust, that energy, that primal drive is governed by something higher than it. It's also connected to the energy of love. We can also direct that energy up towards the mind, where it can amplify and expand our intellect, our cognitive intelligence, our creativity, our purpose, and we can use that as fuel. And we can even direct it up to the crown, where it becomes spiritual, so to speak. Can direct it towards the dissolution of the ego, towards the expansion of the ego. We can have awakenings or spiritual experiences that come online. And I know that this can sound a little bit woo, but this is essentially what the spiritual traditions have spoken of as prana, as chi, as ojas, as life force energy, or bio energy, or etheric energy, subtle energetic manifestation. And to put it very simply, we can direct that energy within us. We can channel it. The energy goes where the energy flows where the mind goes, so to speak. And there's many different forms of practices that you can do, and I'll talk about some of that in a second as well. But it's powerful just to know that this is a concept, this is a possibility. If you don't have experience of that yet, then it's an open loop. It's a question. Is it possible? I don't know yet. We don't want to judge it from the outside and just say, oh, it sounds like woo-woo bullshit. It's something that spiritual traditions have talked about for thousands of years. Therefore, it is an open possibility of something that we need to investigate to figure out if it's true for you. So the easiest way to do that is to start by practicing semen retention. So we start to build energy in the system. We start to accumulate charge. And then we can simply add breath work. Inhale, exhale. You might inhale through the base of your spine and exhale through the top or through the mouth. You can even start to apply things like the microcosmic orbit to visualize and imagine the energy sort of circulating through your body, up and down the front channels. There's a lot of different books that you can buy and investigate, and I'll have future episodes talking more about this. But even just feeling that you'll notice if you retain your sexual fluids for a few weeks and you breathe, you'll feel alive. You'll feel like there's more happening inside somehow, and this can be a really powerful gateway to developing and understanding and expanding your inner world, so to speak. We also need to become aware of the root or the blockages around the pelvic floor. A lot of us hold a lot of fear, a lot of tension, a lot of shame, and we tend to clench the pelvic floor very tightly. And so it's really powerful to relax into that and expand that, and to thereby allow the energy to flow and move. And I remember someone gave me the multi-orgasmic man when I was about 20 years old, and I had started practicing. I was starting to do these different practices, and one day I smoked a bit of weed and was sitting there doing this practice doing self-pleasure and doing this breathing technique. And I had my first kind of spiritual energetic experience. And I had this energy that moved up from my balls, up my back, into my head, and started like swirling around my head like a whirlpool. And I was like, whoa, like this is incredible. Like it felt amazing. I touched my tongue to the roof of my mouth and it cascaded down the front of my body like a waterfall. And that was my first kind of like non-physical, energetic, kind of mystical experience. And that opened a door for me. That led me to, stepping onto the spiritual path and traveling to India and seeking tantra and all of these things. So you should seek to explore this and see what works for you. See if there's something there for you. It's very powerful. Things that also can help a lot is just cold exposure, physical discipline, anything that gets the body sort of pumping and moving and flowing and contracting and expanding. This is going to help to move that energy and stop things from stagnating and allow you to sort of like transmute and to move the sexual energy and stop it getting stuck. Another really powerful practice to add on top of this is meditation. Anything that helps you to become more aware of what's happening inside of you and to train your awareness to direct to different parts of your body and to become aware of sensations and emotions and thoughts and distinguish those and turn them into objects. That's super, super powerful. And you can meditate after doing a self-pleasure practice. You can meditate as you practice semen retention, and you'll become aware of a lot of different inner kind of stuff starting to appear. You'll become much more attuned to subtle phenomena, subtle energetic experiences that happen. And that will set you up to basically open the doorways into lovemaking and into intimacy with your partner in very profound, very exciting, very, very pleasurable ways. You start to unlock orgasms without ejaculation. You start to have multiple extended states of orgasmic bliss. I've had orgasmic states that lasted for 20 minutes or more and just gone from wave to wave to wave, higher and higher and higher, and just more and more full body orgasmic ecstasy without ejaculating. Sounds wild, I know, but it's 100% possible, and this is why semen retention is such a simple but powerful way to unlock a whole new way of doing things, of relating to this part of you, and it helps you to rise above the kind of conventional, shame-based, repressive, pornographic conditioning that we receive. It helps you to discover that sex and that part of you is sacred. It's deeply mysterious. And it's beautiful. It's one of the most, it's the expression of your love. You can go and create new life with that. If there's something more sacred than that, I don't know what it is. But you have to train yourself to be able to see it that way. You have to be able to relate to it that way. And that's why they say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's up to you to cultivate and see the beauty that exists there. And a lot of the spiritual masters, and there's a long list of geniuses and visionaries and savants throughout history who practiced semen retention and saw the value in this and unlocked, that's why they were outliers. It's one of their things that they did to make themselves different, because they intuited that there was a very profound potential there existing inside of us that we needed to learn to unlock. And this is actually an antidote to so many of the things that we struggle with as men. And ultimately for you, this is an open question. What's there for me? I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's false. Maybe I'm just ignorant and I haven't got enough experience yet, but I'm going to test. I'm going to see. I'm going to explore. Start with a few weeks and see what happens to you. And test it for yourself. And as we test this, we also need to become aware that we will encounter blockages. As I mentioned about earlier in this episode, we all have healing work to do. Most of us carry shame. Most of us have trauma and shadows connected to our sexuality. And so it's inevitable that we're going to encounter blockages, and this isn't just going to be a free ride. It's not just multi-orgasmic bliss. Sometimes we need to move through and do some healing work in that process in order to free ourselves from the negative conditioning that we might have received. Because we can't ultimately master that which we are ashamed of. Unintegrated shame is actually the root of addiction and repression. And shame thrives in the dark. So if you have stuff in your history, if you have stuff that is true about you that you struggle to admit and that you're too ashamed of to talk about or to face, then that's a shadow. And the ego, our mind, and our sense of identity will always try to avoid and not have to feel the shit that we don't want to feel because it's easier. It's more energy conserving. And at the same time, if we recognize that we want to heal and we want to reach something higher and unlock new capacities, we have to face the truth. Healing requires witnessing. It requires a turning towards. If we're going to integrate something, we have to turn towards it. We have to embrace it. We have to process it. We have to start admitting the truth about our sexual history, about our conditioning, about our fears, about our darkest fantasies. And in my case, I had heaps of shame. Heaps and heaps and heaps, boatloads of shame, oceans of shame around my cock, around my sexual orientation and my early kind of sexual experiences. I didn't know what I wanted, what I liked, what I didn't like. I had experiences with men that I had a lot of shame about. I had sexual abuse that occurred in my life and I got taken advantage of. And I had heaps of shame around that. It took me years to talk about it, even more years to face it and process it. I had struggles with premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction and performance anxiety and my failures in relationships. So there's so much emotional content there that I was rejecting, denying, dismissing, and avoiding. And this process of becoming, developing a more conscious relationship with my sexuality was the healing journey. That opened up all of this stuff and eventually led me to having to integrate all of this stuff. And I'm still doing that. I'm doing that right now by talking to you and sharing this. I'm expressing the truth of some of my deepest stuff in front of thousands of people online. And that's a testament to how far I've got with it. It's also a testament to the path that I've chosen. This is a result, I want to be a permission slip for you to face and integrate and feel all of the stuff that you've been avoiding. And the best way that I can do that is by showing up and showing you, hey, this is worth doing. This is powerful. This this process that I'm talking about, this is what set me free, because I no longer have to hide. I no longer have to be in fear. I no longer have to compartmentalize and reject and deny all of the shit that's happened to me. Instead, I can reclaim my power. I can take it back. Now that stuff can't hurt me anymore. Now I don't have to spend my life force and my energy, protecting or denying or hiding those things. I can just be fucking free. I just admit the truth. The truth sets you free. The truth has set me free, and I want the truth to set you free. And I think that more men need to open up to the process and support each other in the process. That's why I created a men's group where we just talk about this shit, so we have a safe place to actually just process all of the stuff that's happened that nobody taught us how to deal with, and where we can just create a culture of healthy self-expression and accountability and support for mutual growth and understanding. So set yourself free. Some practices that can help you to do this. Start by asking yourself, journaling or contemplating, what am I most ashamed to admit about my sexuality? Intimidating question, but the more intimidating it is, the more value there is there for you. Face the truth. You don't have to talk about it to anyone now. You might do that later on down the road, but at least admit it to yourself. What beliefs do I hold around sex that limit my freedom? For me, it was, if people knew the truth about me, they would reject me, they would judge me, they would ostracize me, they would think, that I'm XYZ. My woman is going to leave me if I admit to her that I had sexual interactions with men or that I was sexually abused as a teenager. And when I faced those truths and I admitted the truth, and she just loved that part of me, and she was like, oh my God, she cried because I had been carrying that for so long. It brought her to tears that I had to experience those things in my life. And she just loved that part of me. And that was so deep, that was such deep medicine for me to feel that, I wasn't defined by what happened in the past. I'm not my past, Those are things that happened. I barely had control over those things. I was barely conscious. I was just having experiences and choosing, and nobody taught me how to have boundaries. Nobody taught me how to stand up for myself. Nobody taught me how to be clear about what I want or how to say no or, consent or any of that shit, So in that way, I was a victim, I was a victim at that point in my life because I just didn't have agency. I didn't have autonomy. I didn't have consciousness, or I didn't have my power, So can I not just integrate that? Can I not heal that part of me and let go of those limiting beliefs? Isn't that a powerful thing to do, to set yourself free? You can ask yourself, what would it mean to see my desire, my sexuality, my cock as something sacred? How would that feel? What would that do for me? What would that do for my relationship? What would that do for the way that I relate to others, or the feminine, or my lovers, or lover, whatever it is? Ask these powerful questions. Get curious about what you're hiding, why you're hiding it, and what you need to do to set yourself free. You also need to go deeper than just the questions. This is opening a door. The questions are designed to open a door into the truth that exists inside of you. And then there's an embodiment process that we need to go into. We need to contact the feelings involved. We need to, you can pull open Google the emotional wheel, and there's a whole spectrum of emotional feelings and sensations and things that you'll see. And then you can work through and see, what negative emotions have I connected to my sexuality? I've done that, and I sat with anger, disgust, shame, fear. And I thought, what are all the moments that I've felt afraid in my life because of sex? When were all the moments in my life that I felt disgusted as a result of sex? And when I got in touch with that, I would feel it deeply in my body, somatically. I would move, I would make a lot of noise, I was dry retching, I was smashing a pillow, I was like, fuck. Let it out. Move that energy through breath, through movement, through sound. It's like a cancer inside of you. If the shame and all of that stuff that's stuck inside of you it's like toxic. You want to get that out of your system. If you don't get it out of your system, it's going to stay in there for the rest of your life, and it's poisoning you. So you want to create a space where you get to process that, where you get to let it out. Get rid of the poison, detoxify your inner world. Your body should be your temple. And if you want to keep the temple clean, you need to get out all of the stuff that's rubbish, that you don't need anymore, that's not serving you. Another really powerful way to do this is to integrate psychedelics and do the practices that I've told you. Just by taking a psychedelic, you're going to change your state of consciousness. It's going to relax the default mode network of the brain. So you're going to step outside your usual frames and all of your grooves and patterns that you've become very comfortable in. Psychedelics will help you to step out of that and relax all of that. And that allows you to process and go into the traumatic or the somatic experiences or the emotional experiences that exist inside of you from a very different perspective, from a very different state of consciousness. And that's where for me, that's been profoundly healing, because it helped me to just see that I don't have to be afraid anymore, that I don't have to hold on to the disgust and the shame. I can actually just see that all of that stuff was necessary. It helped me to grow. It helped me to develop my character. That was a result of where I started life in the game and the choices that I've made. And ultimately, it's been for my benefit. It's been for my growth. It's helped me. It's just experience. It's given me content to process and to work through, and that's made me into an epic dude. The key is the intention. The key is the consciousness applied there. I didn't get stuck in repression. I worked through that. I saw those as opportunities for my growth, to integrate, to understand, to decompress, to alchemize, and to fuel my evolution. And, if psychedelics aren't familiar to you, then don't do it. I'll have future episodes, or don't do it yet. I'll have a whole future episode on the healing process that I'm talking about here. I'm also integrating that into my online course, into the Legendary Lover, which is all about sexual mastery for men, and doing that in a deeply empowering, conscious way. And I'll have a lot of episodes in the coming year ahead about psychedelics and how to integrate them. They're one of the most powerful tools that we have access to transform and become more conscious. And I'll be giving you guys a path to do that in a very responsible way. Just remember that your shadows lose their power the moment that you bring them into the light. When you face the truth, you own the truth, you integrate the truth, nobody can use it against you anymore. Just like I'm demonstrating here. The truth sets me free, and that allows me to turn my deepest wounds and my most traumatic, dysfunctional shit that happened in my life into a gift that I get to share with you. And hopefully, maybe for some of you, that's a domino. That's a leverage point that just pops something for you and opens a door for you, and then you take a step in a new direction, and it changes your whole life. I've lost count of the amount of men that have come towards me and said, dude, that thing you shared was a game changer for me. That kick-started a whole process, or that set me free, or I admitted something that I haven't told anyone. I faced a certain truth, and you helped me so much. And for me, that's medicine. It's profoundly beautiful that my deepest stuff, my most traumatic things, the hardest things in my life become a gift for others. It's like, what? Wow. So I hope it is that for you in some way, shape, or form. And a man, remember, a man who has made peace with his sexuality becomes unshakable, because there's no longer the war. We're trying to get rid of this inner conflict, right? We have this inner conflict of this primal urge, this beautiful emergence of sacred life trying to move through us, and it's blocked, it's corrupted by the culture and the things that have happened to us in the past, the traumas. And we just want to get that shit out of the way so we can connect to the primal pulse of life and to feel that that's sacred and it's flowing through us and empowering us in a really beautiful way. That's what we're trying to do here. So we're trying to move from suppression and dysfunction into mastery, and from mastery into devotion. That's the arc here that we're working towards, from suppression and dysfunction into mastery and into devotion. So I hope that lands inside of you. To summarize here, our sexual energy is not the problem. It's actually beautiful, it's sacred. The problem is our unconsciousness of it. The problem is all of these blockages that we get from culture and society that's at a certain stage of development, that has problems. It also helps us, it's gotten us to this stage, but it also has problems, negative consequences that we need to figure out how to solve. Semen retention is one of the simplest ways to start changing the way that we relate to that energy. Instead of squandering it and wasting it and using it as an unconscious coping mechanism to deal with our guilt and shame and the dysregulated nervous system and all the stresses of survival, instead of that, it becomes a tool. Instead of that, it becomes a resource, an energy that we can use to direct towards better things, to amplify our creativity, to open our hearts, to channel towards our purpose and create our art. And in order to do that effectively, we need to become aware of all of the blockages and the things inside of us that might be corrupting that might be getting in the way. So we can start owning and integrating the shame and all of the stuff and processing the trauma and doing this deep healing journey that I've talked about. And by doing that, we're going to set ourselves free. We're going to get rid of this internal war, and we're going to emerge into the integrated version of ourself, the fully integrated sense of self. And so my invitation here is to launch yourself on this path, because it's completely changed my life. It completely changed the way that I approach relationships and lovemaking and intimacy. And it's allowed me to create the most epic, beautiful, harmonious union with the woman I'm with. And it just rocks my world every single day. And I want to help you guys experience that if you're not yet already, and to find your ways to create that kind of vibrant, healthy, fully empowering sexuality that you deserve to have. No Nut November is just about to begin. It's a chance for you to, break free from porn, start to practice semen retention. Maybe you can try and go for a few weeks without ejaculating. You can develop a conscious self-pleasure practice throughout this time. If that's something you want to do, you might like to come and join my men's community, where we practice and we do challenges like this and we support each other and hold each other accountable. You might like to do the Legendary Lover course, which is all about sexual energy mastery. And if you're stuck in dysfunction and you want help with the healing process and integrating it and figuring out how to solve this either by yourself or in your relationship and navigate all of this and turn it into really powerful fuel for your evolution, you might like to consider working with me one-on-one and apply for mentorship. That's where I can do my deepest work and be in the trenches with you and help you create systems and practices that can really turn over the page and start a whole new chapter of your life. And that's super powerful. You'll find the links to all of that stuff in the show notes for this. And if it resonates, go and check those out. And if you could, please leave a review or a comment for this episode. It really helps to grow the channel, and I just love hearing your feedback. It's fuel for me to keep going and put more energy and more attention and my time and resources into creating these episodes, which I love doing anyway, but it's always nice to hear the feedback and to put wind in my sails. It helps me to keep going with this. And thank you if you've already done that. Appreciate it. And let's finish with a final frame for you. Here's a powerful rule of thumb that you might like to follow for the rest of your life. As you look out there into the world and you see the herd of humanity, millions and billions of people living their lives, most of it fairly unconsciously, just doing, following the script that society puts out for us. A powerful thing to do in my mind is to observe and question whatever the majority of people are doing, and where it's appropriate, where it resonates with me, I try to do things differently. If everyone around you is working 9 to 5 as a wage slave, doing jobs that they hate, that doesn't mean you have to do that. If everyone is going to university because their parents told them that's what you need to do in order to get a good job, you don't have to do that. I wasted 4 or 5 years at university and never used it, and chose a completely different path for myself. If everyone around you is getting burdened by mountains of debt that they can't afford and end up having to spend their whole life paying the bank back, that doesn't mean you have to do that. If everyone is having kids because that's what society tells us to do, it doesn't mean you have to do that. Just because everyone is watching porn and ejaculating all the time, it doesn't mean you have to do that too. If you want uncommon results in your life, you need to test the boundaries of what is considered to be normal. You need to break free and step out of the box or the mold that society gives us. Society is great because, it brings us up to a certain level of development. But as we've seen with the developmental psychology principles that I've told you about, it's also limited, where the center of gravity is stage blue, stage orange, starting to be stage green, but there's higher levels above that. And culture will try to pull you down to its level. It wants to keep people conforming to the normal, acceptable script somehow. And if we want to evolve ourselves and become more and extract the real juice out of life, we have to go beyond what society teaches. And in doing that, you are going to receive pushback because society doesn't want you to, other people will want you to stay how you are. Your friends, your family, maybe even your partner might resist your transformation, might resist the fact that you're practicing semen retention, might judge you for not doing these things or for talking about your trauma or, traveling to India to practice sacred sexuality. So expect resistance. And this is where it's important to get in touch with yourself and what really is important to you. What drives you? What motivates you? What are you living for? And perhaps you'll discover that your sexuality, your energy, is precious to you, is one of the most precious resources that you have available to you. And it's up there with the finite amount of time that you have here in life. You've only got a limited amount of time. Life don't last forever. The only guarantee you have is that it's going to end. And so, as a result of that, your energy is limited as well. There's only so much energy you have, and therefore, the abundance of your energy directly affects the quality of your time here in life because it determines how you feel. It determines what you can actually get done and utilize and to achieve in the limited time that you have. So if you want to optimize your character, if you want to fully optimize your character and to reach the highest levels of this game that we're playing here in life, you need to start cultivating a deep conscious relationship with your sexuality, with that primary evolutionary pulse of life that exists through you and motivates you. Because it's sex and that sexual drive that's going to choose who you chase, who you fuck, who you partner with, who you have kids with, and who you create and bring into this world if you do have kids. So it's a primary thing to understand about yourself. It's one of the central pillars of who you are. And by becoming conscious of that, you can actually heal the parts of you that got corrupted and wounded by our society in our current time period. And you can evolve beyond those limitations and break free and reclaim your full power as a sovereign individual. And that's huge, absolutely huge. And just remember that sexual mastery isn't about control. It's not about repression. It's about consciousness. And when a man becomes conscious of his fears as well as his deepest desires, and he starts to gain mastery over them, he becomes the master of his own destiny and the author of his life.